Good evening. Can you please take your seat, please? Welcome to the UNEP side event, Tackling Nutrients Pollution for a Resilient Planet. My name is Liu Ning. I'm a program officer of the South to Sea Pollution Unit of the Ecosystem Division of UNEP. Firstly, it's my pleasure to invite Ms. Heidi Savalli, Head of Marine and Freshwater Branch, Ecosystem Division, to deliver our opening remarks. Heidi, please.
Thank you, Ning. Good evening, everyone, and distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues, and very highly valued partners. Thank you for joining us for this important event on tackling nutrient pollution for a resilient planet. This year, of course, we've worked on nutrients for many, many years. 30 years ago, the Global Program of Action for the Protection of the Marine Environment from Land-Based Activities was adopted by countries in 1995. 30 years later, we are here, we're still working on nutrients, and we plan to continue doing so as well. And this has been a great opportunity to engage with multiple partners through the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management, through the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen. There are lots of opportunities to come together, to shape the future together, and also to identify what are some of the new priorities or additional priorities within this topic, exchange on science, share data, and collaborate so that we have a bigger impact than one entity or one organization. Today we stand at the critical juncture. The excessive use of nitrogen and phosphorus is truly driving environmental degradation and pushing us beyond safe planetary boundaries. As highlighted in the UNEP Executive Director report, nutrient pollution is not a marginal issue. It is a global priority with profound implications for ecosystems, climate, and human well-being. We would like to highlight that sustainable nutrient and wastewater management offers multiple transformative co-benefits. It's healthier soils, resilient ecosystems, cleaner water, and reduced emissions of nitrous oxide and ammonia, both potent greenhouse gases. We've had an opportunity now to engage during UNEA. There have been previous resolutions on nitrogen pollution, and we've had the pleasure and privilege to work closely with some of the countries that have to develop nitrogen action plans. We plan to continue this. UNEP remains committed to work on nutrients. Looking ahead, next year, for example, in 2027, we will continue engaging in the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management, provide Secretariat services to this, and also, of course, support or facilitate the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen in collaboration with their co-chairs. Mihail is here, and Purvaja is probably online, but not here, unfortunately. So I always wanted to address this because I think there have been some rumors around, and I want to make sure that there shouldn't be any confusion. UNEP works on nutrients. We will continue. We are working on nutrients within the Global Program of Action. We are working on nutrients through the regional seas conventions and action plans that are doing a lot of the work that we have the benefit to collaborate with them on. And we will continue working on highlighting the valuing wastewater and nutrients aspects that we believe are essential to continue to raise the profile of this important topic. With that, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to your continued engagement in this event and the nutrients work of UNEP. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. Now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Hajime Sugimura, Deputy Director, International Strategy Division, International Bureau, Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries of Japan, to deliver a keynote speech. Please.
So, good evening, everyone. So, I am Hajime Sugimura, Deputy Director for Multilateral Environmental Affairs at the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries of Japan. So on behalf of the government of Japan, I'd like to deliver, firstly, our sincere gratitude for the organizer of this event to invite me as a speaker. Actually, next year, Japan will host the International Nitrogen Conference in 2026 in Kyoto in November. So today's opportunity is very timely for us. So distinguished delegates, officials, and guests, as a setting remarks, I'll try to share 3 points to boost today's discussions. How to shape effective responses to sustainable nitrogen management, drawing from our recent policy development. So first, strong cross-ministerial coordination is essential. Nitrogen emissions come from many sources: agriculture, wastewater, transport, industry. So addressing only one sector cannot deliver meaningful reductions. So integrated national planning is critical. In Japan, the Ministry of Environment worked closely with the agriculture, industry, transport, and health ministries in cooperation with a wide range of stakeholders, from researchers to producer groups, and developed a comprehensive nitrogen action plan, NAP, in 2024 as one of the first 3 countries in the world, in my understanding. So as highlighted in the NAP template that is actually developed under the UNEP Nitrogen Working Group, coordinated whole of government action is the first step to ensure coherent and effective nitrogen management. Such an interministerial coordination takes time, so we call for proactive actions for all stakeholders to prepare NAP and share their experiences and better cross-sectoral coordination. Second, action on the entire supply chain is very important. When we look at the agri-food systems, because I'm from the Ministry of Agriculture, for example, effective nutrient management should go beyond just on the on-farm stage. So downside stages, including distribution and consumption stages, should be involved. At the on-farm stage, for example, Japan passes a policy package for sustainable transformation of agri-food systems, which we call the Midori strategy, as the center of our NAP. Under the strategy, we promote innovative on-farm solutions, for example, precise fertilization using AI and satellite data, extensive circulation of manures and food wastes. At the same time, we are working with distributors and consumers to advance sustainable resourcing, raise awareness, and link nutrient management with efforts to reduce food loss and waste. In fact, we know that food loss and waste is one of the key drivers of nitrogen issues, but communicating with consumers on this issue is not an easy task. So not only better scientific understanding, but also better communication tools are needed. Third, science and evidence-based international cooperation should be enhanced. To realize interministerial coordination and whole of supply chain actions, we need a common language so that is translated from each sector's interests, that is, robust scientific foundation. This clearly includes reliable data monitoring and technical capacity to manage complex nitrogen flows beyond sectors. I'd like to highlight that in our NAP, Japan's research institutions, particularly Professor Hayashi and Dr. Nishine's institutions, have intensively worked with regional monitoring networks in East and Eastern South Asia for shared scientific knowledge and improved nitrogen inventories. So building on such foundation, we call for actions towards further expanding regional scientific cooperation and capacity building so that all countries can promote science and evidence-based nitrogen management. So finally, to conclude, we have learned that sustainable nitrogen management cannot be achieved overnight. Long-term efforts involving cross-cooperation among governments, researchers, and the private sectors are essential to formulate NAP and implement practical and effective measures. In this regard, we emphasize that the significant values of the international networks on nitrogen, including GPNM and UNEP Nitrogen Working Group, to continue their work in a meaningful coordination. So we look forward to working with all partners to translate shared recognition into shared action. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Sugimura-san. Now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Andrea Paris, the Senior International Affairs Policy Manager, UN Affairs, Compassion in World Farming, and to moderate a panel discussion. Andrea, please.
Thank you, Ning, for the introduction. So, as Ning said, I work for Compassion World Farming International, and we're trying to promote the awareness of the nutrient challenge. And it's my pleasure to work closely with the GPNM and the UNEP working group on nitrogen. And today, we're going to have a panel discussion, but we're going to start with two presentations to set the scene. One on nitrogen and one on phosphorus. So first, I would like to invite Professor Mark Sutton. I think we all know Professor Mark Sutton, but he's the co-chair of the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management and the Director of International Nitrogen Management System.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the two previous speakers who've really set the scene very clearly in recognizing the importance of working with the UN system. Globally, this is a global challenge, and I particularly took from Hajime's point about this is a long-term process. You don't get there in a day, so we need determination. But I think my first thing is, both with nitrogen and nutrients, that this is still everywhere and invisible. If you speak to someone in the street, do you know about nitrogen pollution? The chances are they haven't yet heard. And that is really not going to change the world if that's the case. And we need to build this conversation that this is something everybody has heard of. When you talk about carbon, carbon has got there. You can have a carbon footprint on the back of your breakfast cereal in the morning. But you don't yet get the nitrogen footprint, and somebody will be very confused. So why are we doing this? And it tends to be, I think, historically, it's been the scientists that start first, whether it's the ozone hole or the carbon story. And probably with nitrogen, the scientists come first because of the complexity. So I started working on one pollutant only, ammonia, in the environment, in the air. And then I start finding the barriers to change in the interactions. And if we would like to see change, we need things linking up with win-win-wins. And then you start seeing how the air and the water and the rivers and the sea are all connected through nitrogen. Nitrogen becomes this incredible, exciting challenge where there are stories that you never believed possible. So one is, we know that nitrogen is essential for life. And, protein, amino acids, etc. I ask myself, how many nitrogen compounds are there in the world? How many? And the answer to that seems to be that there are more nitrogen compounds in the world than the number of stars in the sky. Why is that? Because every DNA molecule of every organism, individual, bacteria, insect, person, plant, is a unique nitrogen compound. You add all those up, you get more than the number of stars in the sky. So nitrogen is incredibly exciting. Let's then move on to the science we need. And we have been working the last years through the International Nitrogen Management System and just to not forget, with very grateful support to our colleagues at UNEP, particularly Isabel van der Beek and team, who have really been great champions in mobilizing our work through the Global Environment Facility. And we've provided guidance documents, really good resources for countries to use. We're looking to finalize the first ever international nitrogen assessment. What is that? Think about the IPCC report, not AR6 or AR7, but Nitrogen Assessment 1. And that's what we're planning to launch next year. So some of the messages. The first one is that nitrogen food security. The nitrogen inputs have gone up much faster than the human population. The grain we grow has increased faster than the human population. The meat we produce has gone up faster. That means that malnutrition has gone down substantially. Less people are dying due to malnutrition. But at the same time, obesity has gone up. The efficiency of nitrogen use, it becomes lower over time, particularly compared to when we first used fertilizers, leading to a plethora of nitrogen losses. So it's been a success story. Of course, there is still food security issues in parts of the world, but actually globally, it's about distribution. We're producing lots of food, how to get it to the right place. But we have these real terrible losses into the rivers, down into the ocean, from the soils into the atmosphere, nitrous oxide greenhouse gas, ammonia, air pollution, impacts on ecosystems, the biodiversity and forests changing. The lakes, the international assessment is suggesting that something like there's plenty of areas where there's more than 60 to 80% loss of lake biodiversity due to nitrogen and phosphorus pollution. That is an amazing, incredible thing that the world needs to know about. So the solutions, how do we mobilize change? It means we must find the win-win-wins, and that's where if we take action on nitrogen for water, we can get a win-win for air quality, and a win-win for biodiversity, and a win-win for the ozone thinning. And secondly, the nitrogen resources are really valuable. So just take the European Union, 2022, high fertilizer prices, the wasted nitrogen resource worth 60 billion euro, and the total cost of Europe's common agricultural policy to support farmers is 60 billion euro. So this is a massive economic opportunity to do better in addition to those huge air, land, water opportunities. So that assessment is going to come out. One of the key things in our head, and I know it already, is that assessment will be critical for awareness raising. We already have the Guardian newspaper chasing me on a regular basis. When is it going to be out? We have an agreement with the Science Media Centre in London that they're ready to mobilize it in relation to. So we hope all those messages are going to be coming out and supporting that societal conversation at a global scale that makes nitrogen worthwhile talking about, and of course worthwhile everybody saying, let's work on it, let's go for this win-win solution, food security, environment, economy, all at the same time. I think that's about as much as I have to say. I did not talk about phosphorus. You'll get a phosphorus thing in a minute, Andrea will tell you about, but in GP&M, really these are big opportunities. It's wonderful, as you know, to work with this partnership, building the cooperation between academia, member states, business, civil society, and if you're not yet involved in GP&M, sign up and get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I think this is really important, that we have to communicate that really working on nutrient management means win-win solution. A win for climate, for biodiversity, soil quality, air quality, water quality. And I think this is fundamental to keep bringing the message, because we understand that this is not an easy topic to bring in every stage. And in every UN conference, we're trying to bring this message. The public needs to know more about nutrients. So now we have a video on phosphorus sent by Brian Spears from the UK Center of Hydrology. Is the video ready?
Phosphorus pollution is destroying our ecosystems. Our rivers, lakes and coastlines can't take any more. Each year we pour more and more phosphorus into the environment, making algae grow out of control, which can kill our fish, poison our lakes and rivers, and hurt people and animals that drink from them. Phosphorus pollution is even beginning to kill the life in our seas. It's reached a critical point. If we don't act now, my generation will be left with a problem too big to fix. Without phosphorus fertilizers, we can't grow enough food to feed everyone. But we must be more careful. Farmers should only use what they need to use. We should recycle the phosphorus in our wastes and provide toilets for the 2/3 of the planet that don't have them. Currently, 80% of our wastewaters are poured into rivers without any treatment. But together we can beat the algal blooms. You can make a big difference at home. Consume less. We can reduce the amount of meat we eat. a portion of meat takes a lot more phosphorus to grow than a portion of vegetables. Waste less. Wasting less food means we need to produce less food, which means less pollution. Buy better. We can buy foods that are made in environmentally friendly ways. Consume less. Waste less. Buy better. My generation is going to be bigger than ever before. We will need more clean water and food than ever before. Please don't leave us with your problems. Our phosphorus future. Building.
So now that we've set a little bit the scene for nitrogen and phosphorus, I would like to invite the panelists. So first of all is Ghislaine Cugnaseri from the National Institute for Space Research. I would also like to invite Mihai Constantinescu, co-chair of the UNEP Working Group on Nitrogen and director of the Management Unit for the Pollution Prevention and Reduction in Rural Areas of the Government of Romania. Next, Anastasia Yan, UNEP International Consultant and also from the University of Edinburgh in the UK. Now I would like to invite David Cantor, Associate Professor from New York University and Chair of the International Nitrogen Initiative. And finally, I would like to invite Samya Singh, Assistant Professor from the Indian Institute of Forest Management. And since we have plenty of chairs, Mark, if you would like to come up as well, in case you would like to react to any of the discussions that we're going to have here today. So we want to focus this discussion on how can we do better with coherence, both on international to national level. And we want to start with a focus on a country. Because we're in UNEA, we heard about UNEA resolutions. But how do we bring UNEA and the commitments on nutrient management, on nitrogen management to a national level? And so, Ghislaine, you recently published a paper that is called Nitrogen Pollution in Brazil, Policy Coherence Analysis of Current Nitrogen-Related Regulations for a Potential Integrated Approach. And I think I don't think it was me, but something happened. So I would like to start with that because how important are regulatory frameworks for advancing nutrient management and policy coherence? You have the mic there?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here, surrounded by such high-level scientists to discuss this very important subject. So, as Andrea mentioned, we just published a paper about policy coherence. So, in this study, we analyzed the coherence of nitrogen-related policies in Brazil. The results are very interesting for the country, but they can also be expanded to the international level. In summary, the finds show that domestic policies are mostly coherent. It's a good thing, though not necessarily they mean they are integrated. The real challenge lies with the National Fertilizer Plan, launched in 3 years ago, it's better to say. This plan encourages increased fertilizer production and use, but makes no mention to the environmental impacts. This may cause, nor does it propose measures to manage those impacts. As a result, the National Fertilizer Plan risks canceling out the results of other policies related to air and water quality, climate change, and more. So to build coherence, this plan should be updated to include sustainable nitrogen management targets, created a unified framework where economic and environmental goals support each other rather than clash. Bringing this Brazilian example to the international level, this shows that international agreements must encourage policy consistency within countries. Global frameworks can promote coherence by requiring nations to assess and align their own policies, ensuring that, for example, agricultural trade and climatic strategies support rather than undermine nitrogen pollution targets. To conclude, I'd like to express my hope that the Belém Declaration on Fertilizer can create the conditions for Brazil's fertilizer plan to align with environmental demands while also encouraging great policy integration and cross-sectoral coordination.
Thank you, Gislini. I think it's very important when you mention global frameworks can promote coherence. I don't know if anyone in the panel would like to react to Gislini's intervention. Good, because we don't have a lot of time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You
Mark.
go, no.
Go ahead.
You mentioned about the Belém Declaration, and
Yes.
I'm not sure if everybody knows it. So can you tell a bit more?
Yeah, the Belém Declaration on Fertilizers was launched in the COP3. It's an initiative from UK and Brazil, and it's about how to sustainably manage fertilizers all over the world. There's so many measures, but on the contrary of the Brazilian plan, which is focused on production and only production, this Belém Declaration also has some intentions to have sustainable nitrogen use and also to take care of the impacts it may cause. So I have the hope, really hope, that this can create the environment in Brazil, that we have a much more better plan, because Brazil is one of the greatest agricultural producers. So the actual plan is only about production, as we talked earlier, but there's a single line about the impacts. So it's very complicated because there's no coherence with other policies. So it can cancel out other policies in place. So it's really bad thing that we have to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it is important to follow what's going to happen with the Belém Fertilizers Declaration. And now we're going to go from country to the nutrient working group on nitrogen, because you, Micha, has been working with several countries. And I would like for you to provide some insights on what do you think are the way forward, and most importantly, the key challenges that we face at the moment for tackling nutrient pollution.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the question. You worded very well challenges, and I will also extend your question to solutions. First of all, I will divide somehow the countries on two categories, and I will speak more on category one, countries that already developed and implemented policy, referring to European Union, because I know better those policies. So at the level of EU, of course, there are policies prepared for nutrients, especially for nitrates, for wastewater, also for ammonia. We have directives, wastewater directive, prevention and reduction of pollution from nutrients for nitrates from agriculture, and also national emission ceiling directive, which is transposing the Gothenburg Protocol. The challenge remains at the level of EU with integration.
So we do have policies that different departments at the level of EU, European Union Commission, which are mirroring the departments at the level of different ministries, and especially within the Ministry of Environment. But when it comes to have an integrated view and to discuss about nitrogen waste, you cannot have an answer because the topic is divided, and somehow this is leading to some inconsistencies in policy development and implementation. Nevertheless, European Union developed far more the policy on agriculture, linking the subsidies with constraints, conditionalities related, for example, with fertilizers. At the level of EU, we are obliged, the farming sector is obliged to have very clear fertilization plans based on agrochemical studies above certain area, and in case of wishing to apply more fertilizers than the consumption of crop per hectare, or in case of irrigated land. So in this case, I will remain with the understanding that the challenge remains integration, and at the same time dealing with a very heavy sector, which is agriculture, and a sector which also is essential with a lot of population, rural population, which is sensitive to changes and adopting new practices. On the other hand, we are having most of the countries that we've been working together now, 97 member states at the level of the working group, in the direction of preparing national action plans. And this proved to be really a challenge, because as our previous speakers said, it's about time, it's about communication, it's about focal points, developing very strong collaborative relations, a very strong cooperation with other colleagues from different ministries. It's not a job to be done by the Minister of Environment, and the Minister of Environment can only host other meetings, facilitate, and push for further, more ambitious policies. But it's about agriculture, it's about industry, it's about transportation, it's about energy. So the main challenge here, it will be for the focal points to be active, to initiate a cooperation back home, and to start preparing the policies and consolidating the understanding over the topic. A challenge in the nitrogen, it remains with the more abstract concept of what nitrogen pollution means. If you think about plastic, we all imagine some plastic debris floating on a river, and it's very clear. Climate change, the same. We see now tornadoes and so on, or drought. But when we speak about nitrogen, it's a bit more abstract, and it's linked. Despite being linked with everything, you don't have you cannot visualize so easily. Nevertheless, probably you would expect to speak about funds, and yes, really funds are the engine that are putting everything in motion. But before jumping to funds, I prefer to encourage the member states to consolidate a perspective, to go from the idea to a plan, and then funds will come. Funds are always following not ideas, but are following policies that are developed, accepted, and for which the government is committed to. And then funds will come because they will see that the member states is prepared. It's about funds are very much linked with the readiness of the countries to implement policies. So these are the challenges from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mihai. And yes, thank you for highlighting also, because nutrients, nitrogen, and specific in this case, goes across many sectors. That makes it really difficult to have a lot of policy fragmentation. And since you've mentioned national nitrogen action plans, I would like to move now to Anastasia, because I know you've been helping the government of Sri Lanka to develop their national action plan on sustainable nitrogen management. And I'm going to pair this with a question that is, how can international cooperation strengthen the support for implementation at a national level?
Okay, thank you so much. And it's also a pleasure to be here. So I was just going to talk about a couple of examples that led to the development of the National Action Plan, but it was one of the projects that quite a few of us in the room, and this was led by Professor Mark Sutton, was the South Asia Nitrogen Hub, SANH. So I don't know if you've heard of this, but it was funded by the UK government, sort of a 5-year-long project, and this promoted partnership, international cooperation between South Asia countries and UK research partners. And through this initiative, evidence was built, but with that as well, it sort of catalyzed thinking around policy. We did policy assessments following methodologies provided by David Cantor and others, but to really look at what that policy landscape looks like across those countries in South Asia. And from that, then we were able to then, as researchers, have those conversations with policymakers around what that policy looks like, what are the gaps, where are the strengths and opportunities. But again, as we've mentioned throughout, like often you start these conversations and people are like, I hadn't realised that was what we were talking about. They're new to the issue of nitrogen, and if they have come across it, they're thinking of it around agriculture and fertilizer, when, as we've heard about today, this is around waste, it's about transport, it's about energy, many things. So it's really trying to think about that in an integrated way. Anyhow, so having these conversations also with governments, and in this case Sri Lanka, who've been very active anyhow in this area, and then led one of the resolutions on nitrogen. We had a big event, and we brought together national stakeholders to talk about what a national action plan might look like, and this included a range of sectors, a range of stakeholders, and that had that initial conversation. So when SANH, as many of these projects do, comes to an end, we'll still be able to follow on with that work. And through the support of UNEP and the coordination from Ning, this led to then the ability to be able to actually initiate the National Action Plan for Sri Lanka. So this has been ongoing for about a year and a half. It's not finalized like it has been in Japan, but there's a draft document, and this is still in consultation with stakeholders. It still needs to be finalized and approved, but the fact that, just having those resources and really initiating those conversations and that ability to build research into that and evidence has been one of the sort of, most important aspects, I'd imagine.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone in the panel would like to quickly react from Miha and Anastasia?
If you're silent for 30 seconds, I'll say something. I think these national action plans are really a big thing. And in the second resolution, we worked with Sri Lanka to get that through. And it was in fact a challenge even to get national action plans mentioned in the resolution. In the end, the line is something like to share information on national action plans for nitrogen as available according to existing resources. And as those of you who have been following the resolutions game will know, sometimes you have to go pretty low to get your line in. But that line did get in to the resolution, and now it means it's a thing. And you're working together to turn this thing into reality. And getting those ministries cooperating, getting all the stakeholders on board, at the same time you're getting the coordination, but everybody knows the topic as a result and can work together. So it's really wonderful.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, so from national action plans, this is what we want to highlight, that also there could be peer learning from some countries starting to do it, then other countries can lead the way, and as Mihai says, then the funding might follow. But it is important to keep pushing from what agreed at international level to go, because that's how change is really going to happen. And Anastasia mentioned that you had many conversations on how policy looks like, and I think at this point I would like to bring in David, because you are organizing a workshop in the margins of UNEA, specifically for to ask countries and other stakeholders, how can science better support policy? So would you like to comment on that topic?
Sure, and I'll start talking before Mark does. And good evening, everyone. So science and science-based targets are a North Star, really, in any environmental forum. If we think about the 1.5 or 2 degree target for climate, we think about the 30 by 30, 2030 target in the biodiversity forums. And they hold, or they can hold, the international community accountable, hopefully to a high standard. This is what the target says, this is what the science says is necessary to protect the planet. And at their best, these kind of science-based targets can raise ambition. They can guide policy outcomes. They can provide long-term visibility for the private sector. They can also generate despair and fatalism and cynicism if it seems that we are not meeting those targets, and that is something we need to be careful about and manage expectations and do better as both scientific community but also through stakeholders to explain that progress, even in more moderate scales, is really important, and we need to continue bending the curve. But the scientific community doesn't and can't stop at just target setting. We need to identify and make progress on key knowledge gaps that need to be bridged in order to meet those targets. And that's the key goal of the group that's going to be meeting on the sidelines of UNEA, the International Nitrogen Network, or INNET, which is a project of the International Nitrogen Initiative, INI. And INI is a global network that has been around for almost 30 years, that has convened the global scientific community on nitrogen every 3 years at these conferences. And as we heard, the 10th International Nitrogen Conference is going to be held in Kyoto next year in 2026. And so we've been really good at being a convener of the nitrogen science community and using it as a platform to get really important funding in projects like INMS. And we wanted to build on INI's role as a convener and to make it also a catalyst for new research and bringing new scientists and new faces and voices into the nitrogen community that aren't just academic voices, but also stakeholders as well. And that is what we're doing. We have got several working groups made up of not just academics, but also representatives from the private sector, from national governments, international organizations, civil society, across 3 key knowledge gaps around nitrogen and data, climate, and governance. And they're working to develop and create a more policy-relevant research agenda around writing specific papers and identifying grant opportunities and creating collaborations that didn't exist before. We're also putting together a data dashboard, which is leveraging all the great work, and I should say INNET is a coalition of 9 partner networks, including INMS, SANH, GPNM, the Nitrogen Working Group, and several others. And we are very much leveraging the amazing work of these networks in order to try and connect experts in a way that hasn't been done before. And an additional way we're doing that is creating a data dashboard that is going to aggregate, or is already aggregating and visualizing data from multiple different sources to enable countries, as they are putting together their national action plans, to be able to have a one-stop shop for them to visualize their national nitrogen profiles as a baseline assessment, and hopefully to monitor progress over time. And we're also providing some really important opportunities for early career researchers. So all that to say that the scientific community, and hopefully INNET is a step forward in this regard, it needs to do a better job of bringing in from the beginning the non-scientists into the co-creation of knowledge. That's what we're trying to do with this project, and really standing on the shoulders of the amazing partner networks that we have, and we have the honor to work with. And so, yeah, science is very important.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for highlighting this, because we need evidence-based policies, but we have to identify the key knowledge gaps, and this effort is from many stakeholders. Of course, we're based in science, but it is fantastic that you have all these working groups involved in the different aspects. And also want to highlight in this point again the role of the GPNM, because, for example, the steering committee not only has scientists, they have an NGO, which is the NGO I work for, and also members of the industry, for example. And at this point, we know that for effective implementation, we have to involve different stakeholders. So I would like to ask Samya if you would like to comment on this. In the case of agriculture, we know that we have to involve farmers, but not only farmers, many members of civil society in general, many stakeholders. So if you'd like to come in on this point.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And among all these great panelists, I'm the, not age-wise, I'm saying youngest in the experience, so whatever I'm going to say, please forgive me if I'm saying something, not resonating with you all. But, okay, we discussed the global, we have been discussing global and multilateral. Now I'm bringing to very local and one nation specific points. And I was just hearing Mark, it has been pleasure to hear Mark, David, and everyone. He mentioned about it's still individual problem. And as an early career, I would like to call myself, it's not just the individual for the people on the road, on the street, it's actually individual for the scientific community working outside the nitrogen field. So I'll give you example. Even in in India, I work on air quality and largely looking for the air pollution agriculture linkages. When I talk about nitrogen is a problem and contributing as a precursor for a PM 2.5 formation, it is the response I get is like, yes, but what? So because we are able to put the numbers like PM 2.5 or any such pollutant to link the health and giving that how many deaths are being linked to that, I feel that is really catchy, and we are not able to yet be there with the nitrogen or nutrient pollution. And I just wanted to mention that. And then coming back to the question you had about the farmers and other stakeholder engagement, I think I'm a measurement scientist, so I have not really worked with the different stakeholders, but from my limited knowledge and engagements, what I understand that, when you're working with the farmers or other civil society, I think the knowledge gap, identifying knowledge gap is not enough. It's addressing the structural constraint is really important. So, for example, if there is a subsidy, if there is a risk management, really breaking down that for them is very important. The second is actually co-learning, so co-peer learning. For example, if I'm going to tell farmers that, okay, this urea is going to be, harmful for environment, it's going to contribute ammonia and PM formation, I think that's not going to help. So for example, I'll give you, it's not the best example, but work in progress. So I'm going to give example from India. So we have a scheme like, soil health card. We have a scheme, there was an example from the community level learning, natural farming in southern India. So it is a community-led program. And when farmers are, learning from the community, I think that has a better adaptability, and that's what we have seen from that. And the third would be economic incentives, and that should follow the environmental benefit. I think that will be definitely followed by the climate and air quality co-benefits we have been talking. And Mark said win, win, win. And I think if we really link the any policy with the economic benefits. So for example, in India, we have a PM Pranam scheme, which is basically what the central government is doing. They are giving state government 50% subsidy cutoff, help when the state is really managing their chemical fertilizer, reducing the chemical fertilizer use by adopting sustainable solutions. So schemes like that will actually, and also neem-coated urea we have. So schemes like that, which is actually working on efficiency, not just the volume. I think that is being, really valuable. Yeah, so I think these three things I have been thinking that would be very, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody would like to react to Mark?
Of course I'd like to react, but I like to see one of the others react, and I'd like to hear your opinion on what Salmia said.
I'll speak to one aspect which I think is really a really important example of a policy innovation in India, which is this neem-coated urea, right? Because this is so much policy in this area is narrowly focused on farmers, right? How can we incentivize farmers to do the right thing or disincentivize them from doing the wrong thing? And it puts all of the regulatory burden and the burden of management directly on farmers, which in some obviously makes sense in the sense that farmers make these nutrient management decisions, but they're often very much constrained by forces and institutions and actors beyond the farm, whether they be banks or insurance companies or fertilizer companies or farm advisors. And so if we can develop policy interventions or governance interventions that share that regulatory burden across other actors in the agri-food system, that's really important. This is one example where, in addition to the measures that India is taking, they've decided instead of trying to implement a policy focused on the hundreds of millions of farmers, focusing on the fertilizer production facilities and coat the urea that's being produced there, coat the urea that's being imported, which from an implementation perspective is much easier to monitor and enforce. And then obviously the devil is in the detail, or the proof is in the pudding, or whatever analogy, metaphor you want to use, to make sure that these kind of policies actually deliver the environmental benefits that we hope, and the economic benefits that we hope that they do. But this kind of imaginative policy thinking, I think, is really important in this field where agriculture is often the last item on the policy menu in pretty much any environmental forum.
Thank you. Thank you, David. I think at this point, we only have 5 minutes left, but perhaps I can take a couple of questions if there's any question. No.
We covered it all.
Yes. First a comment and then a question to David. A comment from a policy perspective. When it comes to subsidies in agriculture, of course, it's sensitive, but the trick is to switch the subsidies from inputs to outputs and to efficiency. I mean, we can keep the same amount of subsidies per farmer, but instead of paying farmers to buy fertilizers and with not very much care to apply the very cheap fertilizers, we can pay the same amount to the farmers, pushing for fertilization plans and thus reaching not only subsidized agriculture, which does needs to be subsidized, but also efficiency in agriculture. So it's a matter of perspective in how we create the policies. And then a question for David. You mentioned very briefly that the INET will be able to provide data for dashboard data for national action plans. And just to mention that we've been in bilaterals with several countries together with NING, discussing with the member states what will be the key constraints before initiating a national action plan. And one of the key constraints, it was exactly the lack of weak database and evidence on preparing the policy. What can you tell us about this and how can we collaborate further?
thank you for the opportunity to plug, and we have our data manager, Margot Alfar, here as well, who's been leading the development of that dashboard. You know, as scientists, we always like to say we need more data, and we always do, because otherwise we'd be out of a job. But we also have a lot of data on many aspects of the nitrogen problem. And the issue, like nitrogen itself, is that it's spread across many different sources and areas, and often it's difficult to aggregate those in a coherent whole. And so what this dashboard is trying to do is rely on publicly available existing data sources on everything from nitrogen losses to production and consumption to policies that didn't develop. A lot of this data came out of the INMS, the Towards INMS project, and also published by the FAO, the OECD, also in many peer-reviewed articles, so that a country, you know, let's say Uruguay or a Malawi, if they want to get a baseline understanding of what the nitrogen picture looks like, they can go to this dashboard, and in a series of graphs and also in downloaded data in Excel spreadsheets, they can get an understanding over time of their nitrogen context. And we're going to be presenting kind of a first version of this at the annual workshop this week, and then we hope to have kind of a full, complete version of it available next year.
Thank you. Is there a mic? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Tariq Aziz from South Asia Nitrogen Hub and International Nitrogen Initiative, South Asia region. Mark, you have discussed that sustainable nitrogen management is a win-win situation for economics too, because we are wasting about more than $300 billion annually just as a waste. So how we can go towards the nitro finance or something like that, that can initiate a process for capacity building and the sharing of the knowledge as well as the resources towards the global south particularly.
Yep, so the key word there is nitro finance, and what do we mean by nitro finance? Nitro, of course, is nitrogen, but nitro also means go faster. So people used to still do put nitrous oxide into an engine, and the engine goes whoomph, much faster. So nitro, nitrogen, and going faster. And I think the first off is building the idea that reducing nitrogen pollution is not just a cost. And, oh dear, we're going to make food and everything much more expensive as a consequence, but it's worth investing in. And to get that, we need the data on the different regions, the different areas on the measures. So the UNECE has, I think, been really leading in this, that looks at each of those measures and turns it into something that, instead of just pollution mitigation, is a business plan. So we have this happening in Northern Ireland at scale at the moment. There's too many nutrients in Northern Ireland. There's Loch Nea's green pea soup with blue-green algal bloom. And there's a plan, firstly, to separate solids and liquids from the manure. And if you separate your solids out, you can put your solids into anaerobic digestion. The farmer's very happy to have the solids taken away because it makes it easier for him to spread his manure. It's more liquid. It enables low-emission manure spreading more easily, which reduces the ammonia emission and increases the fertilizer value. With those anaerobic digestion, then the solids following the anaerobic digestion then go towards a biofertilizer manufacturing plant, which would mean it can be dried and potentially exported. So it's developing markets. And that particular project has managed to get investment. You can say that's nitrogen and nutrient finance in that case. But imagine a zillion innovations. We were talking last night with Tip about the love word, and the love word being innovation for making a difference, new ideas, new projects. And I would say building the confidence that investor is ready to invest, that bankability term that investors say, and that we've heard of green finance, blue finance, ocean finance. Why not have nitro finance that says this is worth investing in, and building those conversations with the finance organizations together? And finally, coming back to the finance ministries, pointing out not only to environment ministries, but finance ministries, do this well, it's good for your economy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. now we've run out of time. And before giving the floor to Ning for the closing remarks, we would really like to thank Ning because this is the last event that we're organizing together. And I would like to ask either Mark or Mihai to say a few words to say thank you to Ning.
Ning, we work closely for the last years. You are a hard-working person. You gave very good results. It was my pleasure to work with you. And for sure, we'll be in touch in the future. And maybe not everybody knows, but we know each other, I think, since 2018. And we remain in touch. We met in China, and then we remain in touch. I'm very glad that we work with you. I know that you will be leaving the post with 1st of January, but for sure we'll meet in the future. Thank you so much.
Yes, I just want to support Ning. It's been a pleasure to work with you. I think we've had so many conversations over the years, but also the last weeks, and we know that there is a financial crisis on a big scale for UNEP. We know that the budgets are less. We know that makes hard decisions for organizations, how to keep so many staff on, and that's tough. And it comes down in the end to individuals who are really valuable and wonderful colleagues. If anybody has some spare money, by the way, let us know quick, because we want to spend it on Ning. But Ning, thank you so much, and we wish you all the very best for the future, and we look forward to continuing the cooperation, whatever new opportunities you take next.
Thank you. Now Ning, for closing remarks.
Dear colleagues, thank you very much. I'm very touched. Yeah, thank you very much for your active participation in this side event. And I also would like to thank Nippon Foundation and the wastewater team, Alex, to provide the financial support to this side event. And also my good colleague, Walid, and Vanjiru, Dan, and Natalie, and other colleagues, your great support to make this side event successful. And I'm so touched by the remarks from Mark and Mihai and the colleagues. In the last 2 years, I enjoyed working with you. I'm so happy that we advanced this nutrients topic. And also, like Heidi highlighted in the opening remarks, UNEP will continue to provide the secretariat service for the working group and also GPNM. So UNEP looking forward to work with you closely to address nutrients pollution. So thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, look forward to working with you in the future in different occasions. Okay, now the side event closed. Thank you. Good night.